Hello and welcome to our introduction and overview of differentiated instruction with online tools. The purpose of this program this morning is to provide you with context for various applications you can use in Google Workspace and other extended interactive apps that we also provide training for. There's a lot of ways to use online tools, but without a vision or purpose, the incentive and impact of their use can be significantly diminished. My name is Allison, and I have been not only a Google certified trainer since 2012, over the years, since 1999, I have been certified as a digital learning specialist, technology integration coach, library media specialist, and business educator. I've worked with teachers and students over 25 years, providing opportunities for them to use technology. And my goal is always to help everyone achieve more in an easy and engaging fashion, or as easy as possible as it is for them. Not everyone is inclined to be intuitively good using technology, and I try to provide tips and tricks that are more baseline, that somebody with more skill can build upon, but somebody with very limited skills, apprehensive, or just struggles can get started with something right away. That's why we offer the foundation for the training in the specific tools to kind of get your thought processes going about the whys and where you might be able to fit new things into your curriculum goals and topics. So we're going to just do a brief welcome this morning. We'll do a review of differentiation. We'll take a look at the learner profile strategies, the learning environment strategies, and then we'll tap into content, process, and product. And we'll close out with kind of a summary, and we'll take a look at some other considerations you might have. I like to refer to differentiated instruction more than any other instructional philosophy when I do training for technology, because in my opinion, it lends itself to almost an umbrella to all strategies. So whether you're talking about flipped learning or UDL, differentiation seems to have a broad criteria that lends itself to all ages, all curriculum area, and is a sponge for online tools. So in summary, differentiated instruction enables teachers to plan strategically in order to reach the needs of a diverse classroom. So instead of planning individualized instruction, you plan comprehensive instruction that a variety of individuals can tap into. I want to say thank you to all that provided information on the pre-feedback survey. One of the most important questions I ask is, what is your goal of the training? What do you want the outcome to be for investing your time and learning about this? One thing I believe that will make this a worthwhile experience for you is that you already understand and apply elements of differentiated instruction in your classroom already. And you're here because you express a desire to further develop your strategies, make it a little easier, or even just get ideas for fun and easy projects. Some want curriculum-specific ideas, and others want to add to their toolbox of apps and strategies. My hope is that this starter class will refresh our minds about differentiated instruction using Carol Ann Tomlinson's framework as a guide with specific examples and ways to apply. You'll be excited with the new ideas you can apply in your own setting. And after today, we have a variety of training workshops that can teach you how to use those individual applications and templates to put to use in your own environment. There's many strategies to encourage student engagement and help students make connections to what they are learning. One educational tool that is quite effective and easy to implement is the KWL chart. This is a simple graphic organizer and is a great exercise to empower students to their own learning and help teachers curate the most engaging lessons. So what I'd like you to do is, I'm going to pause here for a moment and just reference the digital handout so that you know where the links are for each of these things that are on the slides. But if you go to the website that launches all of the resources on differentiated instruction, there is a handout there. And on that handout, you want to click on Use Template. And when you click on Use Template, you will get your own copy that if you want to take notes or make any changes to this, you can, or add more things, you can. But right here, we're starting in the Introduction to Differentiation, and the resources from our introductionary slides are here. So I want to just let you know that the link that's on the slide is the KWL with Jamboard, and everything we talk about in this introductory session is linked in Introduction to Differentiation. Okay? All right, so in the wrong area. So if you were to go to that link, the KWL, this is a collaborative Jamboard. Jamboard is a Google tool. You can create a Jamboard and make it edit by anyone, or share it in your classroom as an edit by all. And by sharing this with you as a KWL, you have an opportunity to type a sticky note. And to do that, you just click on the sticky here. And then once you select the sticky, you can select a color if you so choose and what you want to learn today. And then you click on Save. So you can see I have one here. It says I like to create learning hubs where all resources can be found in one place, and they are also multimodal. So that's what that is what I already know. Sorry about that. So this is what do you know, what do you want to learn, and what have you learned. So this is one jam, so we'll have a variety of tabs here, or stickies. This is our virtual sticky board, and one thing I love about this is when you use stickies, paper stickies, and you put them on a board, you can't go back to your seat and see them. It's really hard to review them. They're not in a very accessible place when you think about the group as a whole. So this is a really great way. It puts the sticky board right in front of everyone's face. So once you add what you already know, then you can go to the next frame by clicking on the arrow here and put in what you want to learn. And there's some examples of what folks in the past have put that they want to learn. And then in the end, we'll revisit this and we'll put our ahas. So I'm going to show you a few examples, or an example of a previous KWL that's complete. So you can see when you're done what you have and how you can move them and organize them, and you can put them in groups of like themes and things like that, and then kind of develop a next step based on the feedback. So that's the KWL. Go ahead and add your input now. Let's talk a little bit about what differentiation isn't, so we can get that misnomer out of the way right now. Lots of educational leaders have frameworks and ideas for differentiated instruction, and if you research it, you're going to find a lot of different frameworks, a lot of different ways to approach it, and that is great. And one thing I love about it is there's not one way. There's not a list of recipes. There's not different levels of RTI. It's not prescriptive. It's fun to learn about different ways you can differentiate. It's fun to learn new things that can help support it. It's not rigid, and it's a lot more common sense and within reach than many other complicated pedagogies. And I don't know about you, but over the years and times, I've thought I was really doing well implementing something I learned, only to be told, no, that's not quite, you're not hitting the mark. No, that's not quite right. And although I was seeing results with my students and I was excited about their success, being told it wasn't right, it just caused me cognitive dissonance. And I just love differentiated instruction because you pretty much can just make the effort and be successful. So it's fun to learn about, and it's pretty easy to implement. And just remember, it's not individualized instruction. And we're going to look at a video in just a moment so that you can kind of like think about what it's not and what it is and how it can benefit the kids and yourself. I'd like to play Larry Ferlazzo's video that can help get your mind thinking more about differentiated instruction. And it's titled, Differentiated Instruction, It's Not as Hard as You Think.
I'm Larry Ferlazzo. Differentiating instruction. To some educators, it conjures visions of having to create a different lesson for every student in the room and long nights of planning and grading. That insanity is not what differentiation is all about. Differentiating instruction is really a way of thinking, not a pre-planned list of strategies. Oftentimes, it is making decisions in the moment based on this mindset. It's recognizing that, to paraphrase Rick Wormley, fair doesn't always mean treating everyone equally. It's recognizing that all of our students bring different gifts and challenges, and that as educators, we need to recognize those differences and use our professional judgment to flexibly respond to them in our teaching. Carol Tomlinson talks about the ability to differentiate in 3 areas: content, process, and product. For content, student choice is one way we might differentiate, like allowing students to choose their research topics or essay prompts. As teachers, we need to keep our eyes on the prize. In other words, we have to keep asking ourselves, what are the main learning objectives? One day, my students were writing an argument essay about what would be the worst natural disaster to experience. John's head was down on the desk. He was not doing anything. I knew that he was interested in football, so I told him that he could write an essay on why his favorite team was the best. He would still have to make an argument just about football instead of hurricanes or earthquakes. His eyes lit up. He got to work and wrote what his mother later told me was the first essay he had ever written in school. He had followed all the guidelines of a good argument essay. The prize, in this case, was learning to write an argument essay, not learning to write about natural disasters. To differentiate by process, teachers can change up how they group students. Sometimes a mixed ability group might work best, while sometimes it might be appropriate to have same ability groups. We might have an English proficient buddy work with an English language learner to help them out. During independent reading time in my early morning class several years ago, one student tended to fall asleep. I told him that if he wanted, he could go to the back and sit on a desk and read. Soon, several others joined him. A few days later, I saw another student dozing off. Before I could say anything, one of his classmates whispered to him, "Just go sit on a desk."
When he talks about this, it reminds me of, I've always had a little bit of an issue with IEPs in special education, in the sense that common sense always seemed to rule. Like, you would intuitively think, I should provide an accommodation for this student, let's say in this circumstance, but I can provide it for any student. If this is a good way, if you're struggling to provide an accommodation, it doesn't have to be just specific to that student. And so I look at IEPs and accommodations. If you look at them, they might lend ideas for you to allow that particular accommodation for anyone in your classroom, so that you're not having to, it's like, oh, I've got all these IEPs, I have to do all this different stuff. Pull as much of the accommodations out that can just be general standard practice in your classroom. And whether you have an IEP or not, let them take advantage of an accommodation if it helps them.
Again, it's a matter of keeping our eyes on the prize. What are the learning objectives and what are the best roads to get there for different students? Teachers can also differentiate by the type of product students create. The major demonstration of learning doesn't always have to be an essay or a multiple choice test. One year I had a student who liked to doodle when other students or I were talking. I told her it was okay as long as she was doodling about the information we were discussing. She built on those doodles to create a final project that brilliantly and visually represented all the key points we had covered.
One of the takeaways here when I think about what Larry's saying is that it's a little dated. I think in this day and age, we tend to just let kids doodle, but that you can tap into that and say, hey, one of the options you'll have is to create a doodle board. So if you want to doodle your thoughts, and maybe do a little class on constructive doodling. and teach kids how they can take notes in an artistic fashion, but how those artistic notes and images that are maybe annotated can be compiled with digital imagery or on a physical poster to make a final product at the end.
When I give tests, I often give students an extra blank page where they can write anything else they remember about the topic being tested that they think is important. I often find the quality of thinking and writing better there than in response to my test questions. None of the differentiating strategies I've mentioned have created any extra work for me. They did require that I had relationships with my students to know their strengths, challenges, and interests. And I needed to demonstrate flexibility in my thinking. Making these strategies successful also required building a strong class culture so that some of the students were being treated differently and they understood why. And they understood that that was the only way to be truly fair. The ideas mentioned here are just a drop in the bucket. There are a zillion other ways we can support our students' gifts and challenges. We just need to keep our minds and ears open.
So I just like to play that video, not because he focuses on online tools, but it helps us think about different ways we can look at our class and hopefully comprehensively think about different strategies we can employ in our everyday teaching that more students can take advantage of. And psychology today reminds us that our students learn more when the classroom experience is enjoyable and relevant to their lives. So now, no matter what you're trying to achieve in your classroom, be sure to do it with a little lightheartedness and don't be too rigid on yourself or your students, because the more fun you're having, the more likely you are to learn. I'd like to keep this in mind when I'm doing everything now in life as much as possible. It changes your mindset about everything and it makes everything better. The full article is linked in the handout as well in Section 1, Introduction to Differentiation. So if we were using Pear Deck, I would kind of pause right now and say, here, after I've talked and after you've seen the video, please input what you're thinking now, like one thing that you think about what we've just introduced. But since we're recording, we're going to move on and take a look at Carol Ann Tomlinson. We're going to embark on breaking down Carol Ann Tomlinson's framework. So I'd like to share her vision of differentiated instruction with you, and then we'll break down each element and provide you with some specific examples to get your brain energized.
I think differentiated instruction actually is just teaching with a child in mind. It suggests that we have a responsibility to teach students content, but also that we have to always bear in mind that we teach that content to students, to human beings, and that not all students will understand it the same way or in the same length of time, make the same connections, need the same support system. So differentiated instruction is a way of thinking about teaching, which suggests that we establish very clear learning goals that are very substantial, and then that we teach with an eye on the student so that we're constantly trying to ascertain where the student is relative to where we're going, and then making adjustments as necessary to make sure that all of the students go with us on the learning journey and arrive at the end where they need to be. For that reason, then, differentiation suggests to us that we need to look at those learning goals and ask how we might adjust our teaching in terms of students' varied readiness levels, their particular interests, and their particular modes of learning, so that learning works, so that it fits for each student in the class. We often think about students in a classroom as though the class were just one student. And we speak of them as the students like this, the students don't understand this, when in fact it's rare that a particular moment works equally well for all students. And so differentiation asks us to disaggregate the student into individual human beings and to understand what they bring to the classroom in terms of strengths that we can build on and what they bring in terms of needs that we can address. to maximize their possibilities for success.
So to kind of pull together our introduction and review of differentiated instruction, we're about to jump into breaking down each area of the differentiated framework that Carolyn Thomas outlines. And that includes understanding learners, their interests and talents, their readiness, and their learning styles, setting the stage for learning, created an all-inclusive learning environment, and we'll talk about that online space, and then instructional strategies in regards to content, process, and product, and how to incorporate that multimodal learning or create a buffet for learning with these three strategies in mind. So go ahead and go to the next video. If you want to continue on, we'll start right in the next video. Will be all about the understanding learners in regards to their interests, talents, and readiness.